Young Royals has me hooked, and I can't get enough of it. Every scene is packed with so much depth that diving into the analysis feels a bit daunting. The characters and their relationships are incredibly nuanced, handling big and small issues in a way that's so real and raw. There are endless layers and parallels, both within each episode and across the entire show. So, without further ado, let's dive into episode 1 of Young Royals and see what we're in for. Okay, 2 things before we jump in. First, I'm going to do my best with the pronunciation of the names, but my Aussie accent might trip me up a bit, so bear with me. Secondly, I originally watched the show in Swedish with subtitles, but for this review I'm using the English dub. If there are any differences between the versions that I miss, let me know. Alright, now let's get started. Meeting the characters. One of the best parts of starting a new show is meeting all your new friends. The new characters. And Young Royals delivers with such a diverse group right from the start. We've got Wilhelm, Simon, Felice, Sarah and August, each with so much going on even in this first episode. Their interconnected stories make the show a rich tapestry of relationships and drama. Let's start with August. I know, he's a bit of a polarising character, but he does intrigue me. We first meet him when Willie arrives at the school, and it's clear that he's close with Eric, Willie's brother. August seems to think pretty highly of himself and his position. This is confirmed when he casually says he's going to marry Felice, even though they're not even dating. His attitude changes depending on who he's interacting with. He's friendly but in charge with Niles and Vincent, and exploitive with Simon. He's using everyone around him to get what he wants, which varies depending on their status. At the party, he openly states that he never wants to be normal, which underscores his love of his place in the world. Next we have Felice. Initially I thought we didn't learn much about her in the episode, but on rewatching, that's definitely not the case. Our first glimpse of her is in the choir, waving at Wille, which makes us like her right off the bat, because it's the first time we've seen Wille smile. We learn that she's modern nobility, and seems to care about appearances, shown when she lies on Instagram about her amazing horse, when we've seen her struggling. She also seems to be weighing her options between August and Wille, but social pressures hold her back from both. We see her get self-conscious about her curly hair, which becomes significant later on in the show. And one of my favourite moments is when she pushes August aside when he tries to dance with her, showing that she knows how to stand up for herself. Sarah has no trouble with Felice's horse. She is comfortable around it, but her interactions with Felice are awkward. However, she doesn't take Felice's harsh words to heart, suggesting that she sees beyond the surface of a situation. We learn she was bullied at her previous school, but despite having no friends here, she prefers it. She doesn't want Simon taking care of her, and seems drawn to the idea of fitting in with her higher society peers. At the party, she lets loose, but still shows kindness to Felice when she's distressed, forming her first friendship just by being herself. One of the things I love about this show is how every character has their own story and motivations, independent of the main character. Simon exemplifies this through the series. We first see him in the choir, and like Wille, we can't help but smile at how well he sings, and how he overcomes the interruption. He shows real composure, and even improves his performance because of it. He's not interested in impressing royalty. In fact, he barely looks at them. Simon seems unimpressed by the upper class entirely, ignoring them when they try to talk to him, and even walking away from August when he asks about buying booze. What does rattle him though is his family. If they are hurting, he feels it's his responsibility to fix it. When he sees his mum upset about Sarah not having any friends, he says that they're invited to a party. To get the invite, however, he has to approach his estranged father. We see that he's opinionated and openly shares his views, remaining self-assured even around Wille, calling him out when necessary. We'll dive into their dynamic shortly. Last, but certainly not least, is Prince Wilhelm, or Wille. I could spend the entire video talking about him, and what we learned in this episode. We open the show on a beaten and depressed looking Wilhelm, setting the tone for a rough journey ahead. From the start, you sense that Wille's life is out of his control and that he feels isolated. He's told what to do and how to behave, and when he doesn't comply, he is reprimanded. No matter how loud he is about what he wants, it doesn't seem to matter, and he's forced back down. Through flashback, we see that he's been in a public fight, and coupled with his anger at the press and his fury directed at his mum, it suggests that he's a very angry young man. We also see that he doesn't like being in the spotlight. He looks uncomfortable during the speech, while shaking hands at the school, and when walking into the church. His anxiety is also hinted at through his nail-biting, chest-rubbing, and collar-pulling. He may be a prince, but he never acts like he's above anyone else. He tries to put others at ease, and even introduces himself to Simon. He loves to party, and is willing, albeit sometimes afraid, to pursue what he wants, and going after Simon. Family dynamics. One of the great aspects of Young Royals is its ability to compare and contrast ideas and themes. One of the best is the different family dynamics. The Palace and the Eriksson family couldn't be more different. The Palace feels cold and impersonal, reflecting Wille's family dynamic. When you hear the comment that being a prince is not a punishment, but a privilege, it's clear that they care more about appearances than comforting their son. This creates a stifling environment that contributes to the family's standoffish nature. Wille's parents show no outward love or support. His dad and Erik even tell him that he has to fake who he is. This lack of support is evident in Wille's speech, which begins with, "Nobody is more disappointed in me than my family." It's clear that his family isn't behind him, and perhaps never will be. Speeches like this typically focus on the personal disappointment and the desire to make things right. Wille's speech is forced upon him to admit that he is wrong when he isn't. He simply wants a normal, quiet life. Instead, he's caught up in a public fight that he didn't start and is forced to admit that he's struggling with the pressure of his position. To make matters worse, he's then told he must go to a boarding school. It feels almost cruel that his family imposes these expectations on him. The one shining light is Wille's relationship with Erik. Seeing that his little brother has had enough, Erik playfully suggests running off from the royal handlers. It's the first moment of fun we've seen between Wille and his family, and it feels like they've been doing it for years. Wille then clings to Erik in a desperate attempt to avoid being left alone. Simon's family, on the other hand, is warm and inviting. Friends are welcome, they talk openly, and everyone has an opinion. They tease and play around and genuinely care about each other's well-being. Even though they don't have much money, you can sense that Simon's mother, Linda, has done everything she can to give them what they need. The biggest thing hanging over the Erikssons' family is Simon's dad, Mickey. We get a warning about Mickey before we meet him, with Simon being advised to stay away by his friends. When Simon visits, it's awkward, and the hints of smoking, drugs and alcohol around the apartment signal something's off. Simon looks uncomfortable and avoids talking about Sarah and his mum, protecting them as much as he can. He calls out his dad for dealing booze, but he still wants his help. His dad calls him out in return for wanting to impress a girl, quickly correcting to a cute guy when Simon reminds him that he's gay. When Simon leaves, we can tell he's still unsure if he's made the right decision, desperately wanting to accept the hug from his dad, but unable to let his guard down. Start of something new. Now let's talk about the start of this complicated and beautiful relationship between Wille and Simon. Wille first notices Simon when he's singing, and it's the first time we've seen Wille genuinely happy. He cannot wipe the smile off his face. Later in class, Simon boldly calls the royal family welfare scammers. Intrigued by Simon's performance and his outspoken nature, Wille decides to seek him out. Wille directly introduces himself to Simon, which is a bit unexpected, since Simon is probably the only person who hasn't approached Wille. When they do finally speak, both seem to have a different expectation of the outcome. Simon likely doesn't expect Wille to introduce himself, compliment his argument from class, and be so honest about not being able to speak up. Wille probably doesn't expect Simon to continue being so honest and blunt to his face. The moment is cut short by August, but it's clear that Wille doesn't want to leave, and Simon is left bemused by what just happened. The next time they interact is at the party. I love the setup with August asking Wille, who wants to be normal anyway, just for Simon to walk in. You can almost see Wille thinking, me, I want to be normal. But instead of seeking Simon out right away, Wille is determined to let loose and have a good time. He gets drunk and dances on the table, which catches Simon's attention and makes him smile. It's a moment that allows Simon to see Wille as a person, not just a title. Wille finally approaches Simon at the drinks table. They're both adorably awkward, not really knowing what to say. Simon seems unsure as to why Wille is talking to him at all and tries to walk away. But Wille is not letting him go that easily. He follows Simon, asking him if they can go outside together. Once they are alone, we see Wille truly open up for the first time. Simon asks Wille what he thought of his singing, and Wille tells him that it's like Simon was singing from his heart. This is the moment that Simon starts to fall for him, and you can see it in his expression. Suddenly, Wille is more than just a joke to him. Well, sort of. Simon can't resist teasing Wille, especially when Wille pulls him down to avoid being seen by August. Seeing that his antics annoy Wille, Simon keeps going. I love Simon's laugh and Wille's confused look when they hear he's probably making out with someone. You can tell they're both thinking about it, especially when Wille covers Simon's mouth to keep him quiet. This is the start of something beautiful and powerful. There is so much packed into this episode that it's hard to cover everything. Some things like the initiation, which makes me sick to watch, are more relevant to discuss in season 3. Other things like Sarah and Felice's friendship have better examples later on, so we'll dive into them when they're relevant. The one thing that I cannot ignore is the little moment where Wille and Eric swap places before the speech. Talk about epic foreshadowing. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future reviews. If you want early access, members-only chats, and exclusive channel updates, consider joining my YouTube membership. Thanks for watching, and let's see what other secrets we can uncover next time on Nerdy Investigations.